The Hollow Ones, Chapter 7. The Hollow God. Awakens the wind howled through the bones of the old farmhouse, the same place where Elias once discovered the truth about the Hollow Ones. 90 years had passed since their last awakening, but time had not been kind to the land. The earth had soured, the trees grew thin and brittle, and the stars above hung still, as if watching, waiting. But something ancient stirred beneath the soil. The Hollow Ones were no longer whispers in the dark. They had multiplied, splintered from the echoes of every lost soul that had ever stepped foot upon the hollow ground. Each one wore a new face now, a miner, a priest, a child, a scholar, yet all shared the same emptiness behind their eyes. And at the center of their silent congregation stood a shape that was once human, what remained of Elias, the writer. His body was frail, but his shadow moved on its own, stretching far, touching every hollow one like the strings of a puppet master. They circled the farmhouse. They hummed a sound that wasn't a sound at all, more like a vibration that shook the mind instead of the air. Then the earth split open. From the chasm rose a black light, spiraling and pulsing like a heart made of fog and memory. The Hollow Ones bent their heads toward it. It was the portal, the mouth of the hollow. Through it, something immense and formless reached from the other side. The Hollow God. It had no body, only presence. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, speaking in the language of forgotten thoughts. "You wrote us, Elias," the God whispered. "You dreamed us into hunger. Now you will remember." One by one, the Hollow Ones pressed their hands to Elias' skin, flooding him with visions. Every word he'd ever written, every story he'd ever buried, came back screaming. His memories, twisted, rewritten, devoured, were used to fuel the portal. The hollow ground began to spread. Fields turned to ash. Towns sank into shadow. People froze mid-breath as their eyes turned hollow, joining the chorus. The world was no longer made of earth and sky. It was memory and void. And at the center, the Hollow God rose higher. Forming from the black light, its head made of open mouths, its arms of broken clocks, its body a manuscript that wrote and erased itself endlessly. Elias fell to his knees, his mind fracturing as his words became reality. "Why me?" He choked. The Hollow God smiled without a face, because only the one who creates can unmake. But there was no unmaking, only the rewriting of existence. And so, as the last light of the world faded, every memory, every story, every living thought was pulled into the hollow ground. The Hollow Ones watched as the world became a single page of darkness waiting for the next line to be written. Because the Hollow Ones never die. They only wait for the next story to begin. The Hollow Ones, Chapter 9. The Angel Beneath the Hollow. The world was folding in on itself. Every step Mara, Jonas, and Ada took sank into ground that pulsed like a living heart. The hollow ground was breathing now, sighing through the cracks of reality. And in its breath, they heard Elias's voice. "You are walking through my story," it whispered. "And stories end." But the survivors pressed on toward the center, where the light of the portal still shimmered faintly through a veil of black dust. The air thickened with ink, and the sky began to weep liquid words. Then Ada stopped. Her small hand trembled, pointing toward a hollow in the earth, a sunken crater where no ink dared flow. The hollow didn't belong. It was silent, untouched, glowing faintly from beneath. Mara and Jonas descended carefully, their lantern dimming as they approached. That's when they saw it, a figure curled within the crater, wings folded around its form like stone feathers. Each feather cracked and dimly lit from within. It looked like it had fallen long ago and never moved again. But when Mara stepped closer, its eyes opened. They were empty, hollow, but within that emptiness burned a flicker of something pure. "Who are you?" Mara asked. The creature's voice was both thunder and whisper. "Once I was the guardian of the Word. Now I am the hallowed angel. I hid from the God I failed to protect this world from." Its wings unfurled slowly, the light inside it brightening. The hollow ones above sensed it howling, their inked bodies slithering toward the crater, but the angel raised its hand, and the hollow air split, pulling Mara, Jonas, and Ada beneath the ground. They fell into a cavern of light and fear. The angel's light filled the space, but the survivors felt their deepest horrors clawing up from within. Each beam of light forced them to face what the hollow god had taken: memories, guilt, loss. The angel's light didn't just shine, it revealed. Jonas screamed as faces of those he'd lost appeared in the glow. Mara saw the world before it fell, people laughing, books burning, ink spreading. Ada fell to her knees, whispering two voices at once. "Why? Why are you showing us this?" Mara cried. "Because fear is the shadow of truth," said the angel. "To fight the hollow, you must remember who you are." As they faced their fears, the angel's hollow form began to change. Cracks glowed gold. The hollowness filled with light. Its wings spread wider, radiant and alive. The hollowed angel was becoming whole again. "The hollow cannot be destroyed," it said, "but it can be rewritten." It reached into its chest, drawing out a radiant tome bound in shifting gold, its cover engraved with words that pulsed like living stars. "The Book of Light. Take it. Find Elias. Free him before the hollow god becomes him." But it was already too late. The cavern shook. The walls bled ink, and from the cracks above a shape began to descend, towering, fluid, half-shadow, half-man. The hollow god had come. Its voice was 1,000 Eliases speaking at once. "You cannot free what was never bound." Its form twisted, reshaping, bones forming, skin stretching, until it almost was Elias. His face, his hands, his eyes, but warped like a reflection in oil. The hollow god reached toward the angel. The light flared, striking it, but the god only smiled, its form shimmering. "Light is born from shadow," it said, "and I am both." The angel screamed as black fire engulfed its wings. The cavern filled with the stench of burning feathers. With one motion, the hollow god struck the angel down, its light shattering into 1,000 falling sparks. Mara clutched the Book of Light as Jonas pulled Ada back. The angel's body began to dissolve, but before it vanished, it whispered one last word: "Remember." And from that whisper, light burst, forming a figure out of the dust and gold. A man, whole and human, standing where the angel had fallen. Elias, the real Elias. His eyes burned with clarity and sorrow as he looked upon his hollowed self, the god wearing his face. "You took my story," he said quietly. "Now I'll write yours." He opened his hands, one holding the Book of Light, the other the original hallowed book that the angel's light had restored. Ink and light collided. two versions of truth, two creators. The world trembled as Elias and the hollow god Light and Shadow began to write each other into being, their words bleeding into the air like fire. The Hollow Ones, Chapter 10, continued. The split of Light and Hollow Ava stepped forward from the craters as ablaze, her eyes burning with twin fires, one of mercy, one of ruin. The angel's golden dust and the Watcher's shadow twisted through her veins, fighting for control, yet together they made her something new. The hollow god turned, its vast form quivering. Ink rippled across its surface, and for the first time its voice faltered. You were not written. Ava smiled a cracked, sorrowful smile that flickered with both light and void. Then I will write myself. She raised her hands, and words poured from them like streams of molten gold and black tar intertwining. Every letter she spoke became fire. The air shook with creation and collapse. The hollow god roared, trying to absorb her, trying to make her part of itself, but each word she cast burned through its form. The light from the angel weakened it, and the corruption of the Watcher infected its control. The world shook. The hollow ground screamed. Elias fell to his knees, covering his face as his own creation tore itself apart. Ava's voice thundered, echoing through every corner of the hollow world. By the light of truth and the shadow of memory, I enwrite your dominion. The hollow god convulsed, its body splintered ink peeling away to reveal the trembling shape of a man within. Elias, or what was left of him, the reflection, the corrupted echo the hollow god had worn as a mask. Ava struck one final word into the air, a word no one had ever spoken aloud, and the hollow god shattered. Ink rained from the sky. The crater collapsed, and when the dust cleared, the hollow god's power, its essence, spiraled into Ava. She screamed as it filled her, twisting her life into something both holy and damned. Her body split apart in radiance, half blinding brilliance, half endless shadow. A god of light, a god of hollow. And in that rupture, Ava ceased to exist. The two new beings turned to face each other, mirrors of creation and destruction, bound in perfect opposition. Their eyes met, and the entire world paused. Even time dared not move. Mara and Jonas stood frozen between them, faces pale with awe and terror. The light god and the hollow god gazed upon them, as if reading the last line of a fading story. Then, together, they spoke. Every story needs an ending. The ground opened beneath Mara and Jonas, and they fell not into darkness, but into the hollow ground itself. They landed amid whispers and fog. Three figures stepped forward from the mist, the first hollow ones. The Watcher among them, grinning wide, its eyes gleaming like shattered glass. Mara clutched the two books, the Book of Light and the Book of Hollow. Their pages fluttered open, words twisting in agony, trying to write themselves anew. Jonas looked at her. They're fighting through us now. She nodded. Then we stopped being readers. Together they tore the pages from both books, ripping the very fabric of the hollow story apart. The words screamed, black and gold light bursting outward. The books disintegrated, their ashes swirling into the fog. From the ashes a new script began to write itself, and at its first line stood Mara, Jonas, and the three hollow ones staring at a new horizon forming out of the void. The light and hollow gods froze above, watching silently, their war paused by the birth of this unwritten story. A new chapter, a new beginning, and for the first time the hollow ground itself waited, unsure of what would be written next. The Hollow Ones. Chapter 11. The book of rage, light, and dark fought across their minds like two storms. Mara felt it first, a warm, terrible light that washed through her, and then a cold, ravenous dark that answered it. The three original hollows watched themselves from the edges of that mind storm, mirrors of what they had done, and for the first time the sight made their hollow mouths curl into something like pleasure. They ran. The Watcher led them, an inexorable grin written upon its face. In an instant they were on Mara, pinning her to the broken parchment of the hollow floor. The crater sang with voices that called her by name and called for a new story to be written in her stead. "You will be our new book," the Watcher hissed, and its hands began the old, obscene liturgy, to turn a living thing into inked text, to make memory bleed into pages. Mara felt the world tighten around her, the pressure of words forming like chains. She struggled, her palms scraping at script that tried to bind her tongue and pull out her memories, wrenching them into paragraphs. Jonas saw it and surged. He grabbed Mara by the shoulders and hauled her free, stumbling backwards through the fog. They ran through a corridor of half-written sentences and crying margins until they found a narrow alcove and hid, breath tearing at their chests. Her hands trembled over the slashed edges of the books she still carried. Jonas sat, cradling her head in his lap. He sobbed. The sound was small in the hollow hush. For a moment he was utterly hollowed out. Only grief, only fury. Then his hands found the forming book the Watcher had begun to weave, the pages pale and hungry. He pressed it to the ground. The hollow beneath them answered. The earth itself seemed to plead, "Give me a book to fix this." From the pressure of Jonas's grief and the hollow's longing, something small sprung into being, a book born of raw, unshaped emotion. It trembled in his hands, not gold like the book of light, nor black like the book of hollow, but a cracked thing that pulsed with anger. Jonas did not think. His writing was not neat or noble. It was a single line scratched into the spine, with the tip of a broken quill and the iron edge of his panic. "I will destroy everything." The words took and burned. The little book, call it the book of rage, swelled with his intent, and spilled that intent outward like a contagion. The air soured. The gods, sensing the new force, recoiled. Light god and hollow god both shrank back toward the safety of the deeper hollow ground, watching instead of stepping back into the fray. Where the book of rage's sentence unrolled, the world bent. Familiar streets became warped into snarling avenues. Trees thinned into black thorns. The sky grew teeth. Hate, old and new, pooled like oil across the land. Survivors who had held on by scraps of memory now lived beneath skies that fed on spite. Their days lengthened into ache, their nights filled with whispers that turned friends against one another. Mara and Jonas stepped back out into the new terrain and saw what had been born from Jonas's line, a demonic landscape shaped by a single furious sentence. The three original hollows stood before them, grins widened by the contagion, their forms sharper, more certain than ever. They had learned to be consumed by it. Mara raised her hands. The torn pages she still had fluttered uselessly. Jonas held the tiny book of rage like a live thing. The thing he had made to break a story had rewritten everything instead. Around them the world hissed and changed. The gods watched from their hollow refuge, hand-spawned thunder in their chests, letting their new dominion refine itself into cruelty and order. Pain spread like ink. But standing amid the ruin, Mara and Jonas were not yet broken. The Book of Rage had given the world a new axis of power, dangerous and perverse. Yes, but also a place where choices could alter the sentence. The three hollows charged forward, and the new chapter opened with Mara and Jonas, trembling and furious. The last wills of two stubborn people who refused to be only footnotes. The Hollow Ones. Chapter 12. The God of Rage. The world of ash and hatred trembled. From the ruins that Jonas's words had written, something vast stirred an echo that should never have been spoken. The Book of Rage pulsed in his hands, its pages searing with fire that bled red and black. The words he had carved, "I will destroy everything," were no longer ink. They were alive. The ground split beneath him, and from that wound rose a figure made of molten thought, forged from his despair. It towered over them, formless, shifting, its body carved from cracked stone and burning script. Its mouth was a furnace of fury. "I am not written," it thundered. "I am the screen between words." The God of Rage had been born. Its roar shattered the hollow ground. The gods of light and hollow still, bound by their fragile truce, turned their gaze toward it. Their light dimmed before its heat. Mara stood, shielding her eyes from the inferno. "Jonas, what did you do?" He stared up at the colossal being that now burned his name into the sky. "I gave my pain a voice," he whispered, and it answered. The God of Rage moved, every step cracking reality. It swung an arm of molten anger through the air, and where it passed, stories disintegrated, whole histories erased in a single heartbeat. The God of Light struck first, blinding brilliance surging to meet the monster. The Hollow God followed, a storm of black energy spiraling in from the opposite side. The two ancient enemies fought as one for the first time, their beams of light and void intertwining to hold the new god at bay. The air screamed. The hollow ground boiled. Even the three original Hollow Ones paused their torment, staring up as creation itself tore apart. "Push it back," cried the light. Beneath the hollowed ground, it must not remain here. The Hollow God's shadow deepened, forming tendrils of darkness that clawed at the Rage God's limbs, while the light poured pure radiance into the cracks of its armor. Together they forced it backward inch by inch toward the abyss that had opened beneath the ruined world. Jonas and Mara could only watch as the three primal hollows screamed, drawn helplessly toward the vortex. "The stone bleeds," the watcher howled, pointing. And indeed it did beneath the hollow ground, in that endless pit. There was a land of bleeding stone, rivers of molten hate flowing like veins beneath the universe. The Rage God stumbled backward, roaring defiance, dragging the Hollow God and the three hollows with it as it fell. Its claws ripped at the walls of reality, leaving trails of ruin that hissed like dying stars. Then came the final blow. The God of Light descended, a blinding comet of pure radiance. It collided with the Rage God, their collision shaking eternity. The portal swallowed them all. A soundless explosion followed, then silence. When the light returned, the hollow ground was no more. The air was clear again. The ink that had soaked the soil receded, replaced by color and warmth. The light had healed the wound of the world, sealing the rift where hate once ruled. Mara fell to her knees, tears streaking her face. Jonas stood beside her, still clutching the now empty book of rage, its pages blank, its fury spent. "They're gone," she whispered, "all of them." But far below, beneath the mended world in the realm of bleeding stone, the battle still raged, the hollow ones and the hallowed god locked in endless combat with the god of rage. Their screams echoed upward, fading like thunder trapped beneath miles of earth. Above, in the healed silence, the first sunrise in centuries began to rise. The Hollow Ones, Chapter 13. Beneath the bleeding stone, far below the mended surface, beneath the calm skies and reborn light, lay a world that no prayer could reach. The realm of bleeding stone pulsed like a wounded heart, each beat releasing rivers of molten red that hissed across the obsidian ground. The air burned with whispers, every echo a memory of wrath. And there, among the shifting pillars and pools of living fire, the battle had not ended. The god of rage towered, half-formed and half-decayed, its eyes burning with the words, "I will destroy everything." Each movement left trails of molten scripture searing into the stone. Across from it stood the hallowed god, its form cracked and flickering, and the three original hollows, moving like shades through the chaos. Their faces were no longer merely empty, they carried remorse. For the first time, they could feel the weight of the stories they had ruined. The Watcher hissed, its voice trembling with something almost human. "We began this. We wrote our sins into the world. Now we must finish them." The hallowed god nodded, its once void eyes reflecting faint glimmers of the light above. "Then we fight as one, not for dominion, but for silence." They charged. The god of rage met them with a roar that shook the core of the hollow ground. Every blow was a clash of ideas made manifest. Where the hallowed god struck, worlds unraveled. Where rage struck, new worlds were born, each one worse than the last. The Watcher leapt onto the creature's back, stabbing its claws into its molten hide, each strike rewriting the past it had once destroyed. Another hollow lunged, pouring ink into the cracks of Rage's form, slowing it like stone turning to tar. The god of rage howled, tearing free, flinging them into rivers of bleeding stone. But something new was stirring in the shadows, a remnant of light. The glow spread across the ceiling of the cavern, reaching down like rays through dark water. It wasn't the light god itself, but its essence left behind, still trying to heal. The hallowed god looked upward. "It is giving us one last chance." It reached into its chest and tore free the fragment of itself, a sphere of both black and gold flame, and hurled it toward the Watcher. "Take it," it said. "You remember the first lie? Use this to unwrite it." The Watcher hesitated, trembling, then pressed the burning fragment into its chest. Its hollow eyes flared, first white, then gold. And in that moment, the Watcher remembered. It saw its own creation, the birth of the Hollow Ones, the day it betrayed the light. It screamed, not in rage, but sorrow. No more lies. It leapt again, straight into the heart of the god of rage. The impact shattered the cavern. A column of fire erupted, spiraling upward toward the surface. From far above, Mara and Jonas saw it pierce the clouds, a red and gold beacon rising from the depths. Jonas clutched the empty book of rage, feeling it vibrate. They're still fighting down there. Mara looked toward the horizon, tears in her eyes. Then let them fight. Maybe this time, the ending will be theirs. Beneath the bleeding stone, the Watcher's body was gone, but its will remained, a burning brand inside the god of rage. The hallowed god seized the moment, pulling all its power into one final act. Let this rage consume itself, it whispered. It wrapped its shadow around the rage god's form, binding them both. The molten rivers froze mid-flow, solidifying into crystal veins. The screams faded into silence, and slowly, painfully, the realm of bleeding stone began to cool. The hollow ones, scorched and broken, fell to their knees. They looked around the empty cavern and saw no gods left, only the echo of their battle and the faint, golden light seeping through the cracks above. For the first time in their long existence, they felt peace. On the surface, the light from below faded. The wains grew still. The world, scarred but living, began to breathe again. Mara closed the book of rage and placed it in the soil. "No more stories," she said softly. "No more gods." Jonas nodded, staring at the calm horizon. "Then what do we become?" Mara smiled faintly, the answer uncertain. "Maybe something new." And deep below, in the silent dark, a single word began to write itself across the cooling stone. The Hollow Ones, Chapter 14, The Merged Gods. The silence that followed the battle felt false. Too clean. The winds had stilled. The rivers of ink had cooled. And the world seemed at peace, but beneath the calm, something still breathed. The gods were not gone. They were changed. Deep under the crust of the reborn world, the last flickers of the hallowed god and the rage god floated like dying embers in the dark. Their forms were broken, their voices reduced to whispers, but the echoes of their purpose found each other. We were hollow because we lacked feeling, and I burned because I felt too much. The words crossed and tangled. The embers touched. At the moment their remnants met, shadow and flame fused. The darkness did not devour the fire. The fire did not banish the dark. Instead, the two began to pulse as one being, a steady, terrible heartbeat beneath the earth. The hallowed rage was born. It had no single face, no single will. It was contradiction made whole, serenity wrapped in fury, stillness hiding an endless scream. And though weak, it watched. On the surface, Mara and Jonas walked through the healing world. The trees were growing again, leaves glimmering faintly with light from both sun and memory. The soil whispered like it was learning to breathe. Jonas carried the sealed book of rage, now bound shut with silver vines that grew out of its spine. The book no longer fought him, but it hummed. Sometimes, when the air was too still, he could feel a heartbeat inside it, the same rhythm that throbbed beneath the ground. "It's not over," he said one night as they made camp by the river. "I can feel them moving under us." Mara stared into the fire. "I know." She reached into her satchel and pulled out what remained of the Book of Light, its pages almost blank. But one line had begun to reappear on its own. Every end begins again. That night, the earth shuddered. From the distant mountains came a low, rolling thunder, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat echoing through stone. The river stilled, its surface reflecting not the stars above, but glowing red veins beneath the earth. Jonas stood. They're fusing. I can feel it. Mara closed the book, fear in her eyes. If hollow and rage become one, then it won't just destroy, Jonas said, finishing her thought. It will recreate. Beneath them, in the deep caverns once filled with bleeding stone, the two weakened gods solidified. Their forms intertwined, fire and shadow sculpting one another into something new. A vast humanoid shape formed in the gloom, half obsidian, half ember, its chest hollow, yet glowing faintly with molten light. When it spoke, the world listened. We were the hollow that fed on emptiness. We were the rage that devoured meaning. Together we are balance unchained. The merged God turned its gaze upward, sensing the faint lives of Mara and Jonas above. Its voice trembled the roots of the world. The story is not over. It never ends, it only changes its voice. Mara awoke from a nightmare of fire and darkness to find Jonas gone. His footprints led into the valley, the ground scorched where he had walked. The sealed book of rage was missing. She followed the trail until she reached the mouth of a cave where molten light seeped from the cracks. Jonas stood inside, staring into the glowing abyss. They're calling, he said softly. The merged God wants a writer. Jonas, don't. He turned to her, eyes glowing faintly red. Maybe that's what I was meant to be all along. The world was born from words. Maybe I can give it new ones? The ground split open behind him. From within the crack, the faint silhouette of the hollowed rage reached out, not to destroy, but to invite. Mara reached for him, but light and shadow swallowed them both. The next morning, the world was silent again. Only the echo of a heartbeat remained beneath the ground, steady and deep, as if the planet itself had learned to breathe. Above the valley, where the sky turned silver and red at dawn, a new line of text etched itself across the horizon in golden fire. The gods sleep, but the story still dreams. The Hollow Ones, Chapter 15, The Silver Demon. The air shimmered like broken glass. Jonas awoke in a place where thought and matter bled together, where every breath became light, and every shadow whispered his name. He stood in what looked like a cathedral, built from living veins of silver. The ground pulsed beneath his feet. The ceiling stretched into infinity, a dome of molten clouds and shifting eyes. This was not heaven. This was inside the hollowed rage, the God that was both silence and scream, both death and rebirth. And Jonas was not the same. The book of rage lay open before him, its pages burning softly with silver fire. But the longer he stared, the more he realized another book was growing within it, white pages blooming between the black ones like infection. The book of light was merging with it. Each word written in rage began to twist, glowing faintly. Lines of pain became prayers. Curses turned into creation. But it was not healing him. It was remaking him. Jonas fell to his knees, clutching his chest as his veins began to glow. His skin cracked, not with blood, but with light so bright it hurt to see. What's happening to me? He gasped. The hollowed rage's voice filled the silver cathedral deep, layered, and almost mournful. The light remembers you. The rage answers you. You are the bridge between what destroys and what forgives. Jonas screamed as his spine arched backward, silver flames erupting from his shoulders. His fingers elongated into sharp, mirrored claws. His reflection danced across the walls, not one reflection, but many. In each he was something slightly different. Angel, demon, hollow, man. He tried to speak, but his voice came out in two tones, one pure, one furious. I am not your vessel. You already were, the god whispered. You wrote us into being. Now we write you. Far above, Mara woke on the edge of the valley. The sky was pulsing red, white, then silver. The world's heartbeat had returned, louder than before. She could feel Jonas in her mind, his agony, his confusion. When she looked down, the soil beneath her boots was glowing with words being written in real time. Letters forming from dust and light. He is becoming what no god can kill. Mara clenched her fists. Jonas, hold on. The wind around her thickened ashen wings, unfurling in the fog. The hollowed angel, the one that had once saved Adi, rose again, flickering, broken, its voice like cracked glass. He carries both books now, the angel rasped. He is the balance the hollowed rage cannot contain. Mara looked up. Then tell me how to stop it. The angel's face turned toward the bleeding sky. You cannot stop it, but you can redirect it. It opened its palm, revealing a shard of glass, half black, half gold. This is what remains of the first story, the one written before light or hollow. If he reads it, it will show him the truth of what he is. Mara took the shard. Then I'll find him. Inside the god's cathedral, Jonas staggered forward. His body was half silver flame, now half shadow. His eyes reflected both heaven and hell. He saw the book of light finish its transformation, the last page turning itself, showing a line written in language older than time. The writer becomes the written. His reflection stepped out of the mirror and stood before him, smiling, perfect, glowing like a god. You see? You're not human anymore, the reflection said. You are what every story becomes when it outlives its maker. Jonas reached out and touched his reflection, his hand passing through, leaving silver burns on his arm. Then what am I? The reflection's eyes turned white-hot. You are the silver demon, the child of both rage and light. Mara entered the silver cathedral through the rift in the valley floor. The heat and light nearly blinded her. She could barely breathe, the air thick with divine static. At the center stood Jonas, no longer a man, but a creature of beauty and terror. His wings were molten metal, his eyes twin stars, his veins rivers of liquid silver. He turned to her. For a moment she saw Jonas, the one she'd known, the one who laughed and wrote in the dark. Mara, he said softly, it hurts. She stepped forward, holding the glass shard. Then let me end it. The cathedral trembled. The hollowed rage roared from every direction, trying to pull them apart. He belongs to us now. Mara pressed the shard to his chest. No, he belongs to himself. The shard glowed, and the books, the book of rage and the book of light, tore themselves apart, pages scattering into the air like wings of silver dust. Jonas screamed as both God's power surged through him. The light and shadow exploded outward, shaking the world. When the glow faded, the cathedral was gone. Only Mara remained, kneeling beside a cracked silver mask lying in the dirt. Above her, the clouds turned pale gold, and for a heartbeat, a single silver wing flashed across the sky. Far below, deep within the hollow ground, the hallowed rage stirred weakly. Its voice was faint, uncertain. He took our power, but not our purpose. And somewhere beyond the horizon, Jonas, now the silver demon, opened his new eyes upon a world that no longer knew what was divine and what was human. "If I cannot end the story," he whispered, "then I will rewrite it." The Hollow Ones. Chapter 16. The Ascension of Mara. The world trembled beneath a sky that refused to choose a color. The heavens flared from silver to gold to black. Lightning made of scripture tearing through clouds that whispered the name Jonas. But in the ruins of the silver cathedral, someone else was awakening. Mara. She had been caught in the aftermath of Jonas' transformation, the explosion of light and shadow that had erased gods and burned the horizon into glass. Yet she still lived. Barely. Her body glowed faintly as she crawled through the ashes, half buried in fragments of the Book of Light and the Book of Rage, their pages swirling around her like lost souls. When she touched them, they melted into her skin, their words engraving themselves into her blood. She screamed, not from pain, but from change. Her hair turned white at the roots, then black at the tips. Her veins shimmered crimson. Her eyes became a storm of shifting hues, silver, gold, violet, and scarlet. The voice of the hallowed angel echoed faintly in her mind. "You touched the shard of truth. Now all truths touch you." Light burst from her chest, gentle at first, then wild and beautiful. It wasn't holy. It wasn't unholy. It was everything. The ground beneath her split, and out of the crack rose 5 figures, each shaped from fragments of her soul. The first radiated pure light, wings bright as dawn. The second was darkness incarnate, eyes like twin eclipses. The third burned with rage, its body aflame and heart pulsing red. The fourth pulsed with love, serene and infinite. The fifth glowed faintly blue with peace, its breath like quiet wind through leaves. They circled her 5 aspects of her essence, watching in silence. "You are no longer only Mara," said the One of Light. "You are what the world needs when gods fall." The 5 merged into her, their forms dissolving into radiance. The sky above shattered into color as she rose, feathers made of light and shadow unfurling from her back, her halo flickering between gold and black flame. She was now the angel of balance, but her name whispered through the hollow winds as something new. Mara, the angel of light, darkness, rage, love, and peace. Her senses expanded beyond the mortal world. She could feel the hollowed rage stirring beneath the earth, and far away beyond the horizon, the silver demon spreading his will. Reality itself trembled under his rewriting. Oceans boiled into silver glass. Trees grew eyes and whispered prayers. People dreamt of a world that never existed and woke to find it real. Jonas was no longer human. He was rewriting existence as a living scripture. Mara clenched her fists, her new wings glowing like galaxies. "You took the power of gods," she said softly, "but I carry the power of what made them." She rose into the storm, tearing through the clouds where the sun and moon fought to coexist. Her flight burned trails of color across the sky, silver, red, and blue. When she reached the edge of the world, she found Jonas. The silver demon stood atop a tower of light and bone, staring down at a landscape he was reshaping with every breath. Forests bent to his will, mountains folded into spirals. He turned when she arrived, his eyes burning with endless knowledge and sorrow. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his voice layered with echoes of every god that ever existed. "I'm not Jonas anymore." Mara hovered before him, her wings shifting color like living flame. "Then who are you?" He looked past her at the horizon, where the hollowed rage's pulse still beat faintly beneath the ground. "I am what comes after endings," he said. "I am story itself." Mara smiled faintly. "Then you need a new author." Their powers collided. Light met silver, shadow met flame. Each clash of their wings sent shockwaves through the air, rewriting reality for mere seconds before collapsing again. Where they struck, new life was born, creatures of light and dark intertwined, whispering prayers to both. Their battle wasn't destruction, it was creation in conflict. Jonas, voice shaking. "Why fight me, Mara? You could join me. Together we could end pain." Her halo flared crimson gold. To end pain, you'd have to end choice. And that isn't peace, that's hollow. As they fought, the hollowed rage began to awaken fully below. The ground cracked open, red light spilling out, and a great eye blinked within the fissure. It watched them, the merged god, still bound but stirring. "You are what I was meant to become," it rumbled. "Light and fury, love and despair. You are my successor." Mara felt its power resonating with hers. She looked down at the god beneath her, then back at Jonas. "No," she said softly. "You are what was. I am what must be." She raised her hands. 5 colors of light spiraled from her palms, white, black, red, pink, and blue, spinning into a single, blinding beam that struck both the hollowed and the silver demon. The blast silenced the heavens. The merged god's roar faded into nothing. Jonas screamed as the silver burned away, leaving him flickering between demon and man. When the light dimmed, the world was still. The hollowed rage slept again, sealed beneath stone. Jonas lay motionless in the crater of his unmade power-silver, tears running down his face. Mara descended beside him, kneeling. Her wings flickered softly as she touched his cheek. "You were never a demon," she whispered. "You were just a story trying to find its end." He opened his eyes weakly, the silver fading from his irises. "Did we win?" She smiled faintly. "Not yet, but the world is listening again." Above them, the sky began to hum a low, ancient tone, as if the universe itself was turning a page. And from that unseen book, a new line wrote itself across the stars. The story begins again with balance watching.